Hello again, my dear friends. I'm so happy you're here with me. This is Lucy Vane, and today I want to invite you into the quiet beauty of winter. Not the grand kind you see on postcards, but the soft, lived-in kind. The kind you feel in the warmth of an old wool blanket, or in the way the morning light hits fresh snow outside your window. This is a story about the little town of Springfield, wrapped in silence, snow, and small things that matter more than we realize. Springfield had changed overnight. What had been brown and dull just a day before was now transformed by snowfall that came in gently through the night, blanketing rooftops, hiding potholes, sore-funning edges. The air smelled like cold pine, and everything was quieter than usual, as if the world itself was whispering. In the Simpson household, the day began not with noise, but with silence. It was Lisa who first woke up. Her alarm hadn't gone off. There was no honking outside, no noise from the radio Homer usually forgot to turn off. There was just stillness. She pushed aside her covers and slipped her feet into oversized socks, walking softly across the creaky, wooden floor toward the window. And there it was, her world covered in white. The snowfall wasn't heavy or dramatic. It was light, powdery and calm, but there was something incredibly profound about it. Lisa stood there for a long time, hugging her elbows, not moving. Not yet. Just watching. Inside her, something unclenched. She had been carrying stress from school, from trying to prove herself, from growing up too fast in a house that sometimes felt chaotic. But this moment, this silence, this was hers. Downstairs, Marge was already awake. Of course she was. Marge Simpson never slept, and not really. Her body was tuned like a living clock. Even when she didn't need to be up early, she found herself puttering in the kitchen before sunrise. It was her time, her version of peace. A cup of coffee, a clean sink, the smell of bread warming in the oven. She didn't rush today. There was something different in the way she moved. She lit the stove slowly, measured the coffee grounds by hand instead of using the scoop. She took out the good mugs, the heavy ones with a slight crack on the handle, the kind that felt like home in your hand. And then she paused. It was the kind of pause people don't take off on one field, not with worrying or distraction, but presence. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening. No traffic, no Bart screaming, no Homer snoring with the TV on. Just the sound of the kettle beginning to hum, and somewhere above, a creak in the floorboards. Lisa, awake. Marge smiled softly. She wasn't a sentimental woman by nature. Life hadn't allowed her that luxury. But in that moment, she allowed herself a memory. A winter morning long ago, in a smaller house, when she was a child. Her mother making oatmeal. Her father reading the paper by the window. The radio playing something slow and steady. Snow falling outside, just like today. She opened her eyes. The kettle whistled. Lisa finally came downstairs, her steps soft on the carpet. Marge turned, her face lighting up just a little more. "Morning, honey," she said, pouring 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, and a half cup of milk with a splash of brew for Lisa, just the way she liked it. Lisa called it training coffee. It made her feel grown up without being bitter. "Morning, Mom," Lisa said, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic mug. "It's beautiful out." "It really is," Marge nodded, sitting across from her daughter. And then, for a few minutes, they just sat there. No rush to talk. No need to fill the silence. Just 2 women, one younger and one older, sharing a still morning with snow at the windows and heat in their hands. It was the kind of scene that never makes it into the headlines of a day. But it mattered more than any headline could. And as I picture the Marge and Lisa sitting at that table, I'm reminded of mornings with my own mother. The quiet ones. The ones without big plans or big drama. Just the 2 of us, the steam from our cup swirling up between us, saying more than words ever could. Winter has a way of making things clearer. It strips away the noise, the flash, the pressure to perform. What's left is presence. What's left is enough. Outside, Springfield slowly began to stir. Windows lit up one by one like lanterns. Neighbors shoveled their sidewalks with red noses and foggy breath. Dogs barked, leaving tiny prints in the snow. Somewhere, a newspaper delivery boy cursed under his breath as his bike slid out from under him, but even that felt gentle in the snow. At the Quickie Mart, Apu shoveled salt on the front steps with gloved hands, humming a holiday tune slightly off-key. Across the street, old Mrs. Glick stared out her window, her cat asleep in her lap, remembering winters when her husband was still alive, and the two of them decorated their tree with popcorn string. These weren't the kind of moments that would ever make it into a storybook, but they were life, and they were real. Later that morning, Lisa retreated to her room, sat by the window with her notebook in her lap. She didn't write homework. Not today. She wrote feelings, thoughts, descriptions of snow and silence, and her mother's quiet strength. She wrote about how sometimes the world seemed too fast, too loud, and too full of things that didn't matter. But days like today, mornings like this, they helped her remember who she was. She didn't know if anyone would ever read these pages. She wasn't writing for anyone else. She was writing for herself. And perhaps, my dear listener, you've had mornings like that too. Mornings where the coffee tasted just right, where the snow reminded you of childhood, where you paused not because you had to, but because something told you to stay still for just a little longer. If so, I hope this story brought those memories back to you softly, gently, like fresh snow on the windowsill. This winter, let us not only stay warm, but stay close to what matters. By mid-morning, while the inside of the Simpson house remained wrapped in warmth and soft conversation, Homer Simpson stood by the front door, bundled in layers, preparing for what he proudly called a crucial winter mission. In truth, it was simply a walk to the backyard shed to gather a few logs for the fireplace. But in Homer's mind, it carried the weight and glory of an expedition. The way he saw it, winter was a test of character, and this was his chance to pass it. He reached for his boots, then paused to consider whether he needed a fourth layer. After a moment of internal debate, he tugged on an extra scarf and slipped a thermal cap over his already mussed hair. He looked into the hallway mirror, nodded at his reflection, and muttered, "Let's do this," like a man stepping into history. Outside, the cold hit him immediately, sharp and clean. It had that particular kind of bite that crept past coats and gloves and settled somewhere along your spine, reminding you that nature always had the upper hand. Homer winced, pulled his scarf higher, and took his first careful steps onto the icy porch. The snow beneath his boots gave a soft crunch, the kind of sound that only exists when the world is quiet enough to notice it. As he crossed the backyard, something shifted beneath his foot. Homer's arms flailed like windmill blades as he lost balance on a hidden patch of ice. With a loud grunt and a comedic flurry of falling snow, he landed flat on his back, staring up at the pale, cloud-covered sky. For a moment, he simply lay there. The cold seeped through his coat, the snow dusted his cheeks, and the world continued, unaffected. Homer blinked. "Well," he mumbled, "at least I didn't drop the hatchet this time." He sat up slowly, brushing snow off his sleeves, then laughed softly at first, then heartily. There was something about falling down in the snow that made you feel like a child again, even if your back reminded you that you weren't one anymore. Eventually, he rose to his feet and continued toward the shed, determined not to let gravity claim victory twice in one morning. The shed door creaked open with effort. Inside, the air was still and dry, filled with the scent of cedar and earth. Wooden logs were stacked neatly in one corner, thanks to Marge's foresight the week before. Homer gathered what he could carry, 4 logs, maybe 5 if he balanced carefully, and turned to head back toward the house. That's when he heard the voice. "Howdy ho, neighbor Reno." There, standing on the other side of the backyard fence, was none other than Ned Flanders, Springfield's most relentlessly cheerful resident. Wearing a green winter parka and a hat with ear flaps, he looked like a holiday greeting card come to life. "Ned," Homer replied, trying not to sound like he just pulled a muscle. "You out spreading joy and unsolicited advice." Ned chuckled, brushing a bit of snow from his gloved hands. "Just clearing the walkway. Gotta keep things safe for Mrs. Crab-a-Pole. She comes by sometimes to drop off cookies." Homer raised an eyebrow. "Cookies? Huh. Well," Ned said, "sometimes it's a pie. But you know, neighborly gestures never go out of season." Homer adjusted the logs in his arms and sighed. "Wish I had time for gestures. I'm on official fireplace duty. The family needs warmth. I'm basically a hero." Ned smiled, but something softened in his eyes. "Well, even heroes need a moment to catch their breath. You got a minute, Homer?" Homer hesitated. His arms were full. His toes were cold. But something in Ned's voice wasn't just cheerful, it was inviting in that rare, honest way. He walked over, set the logs down on the edge of the porch, and leaned against the fence. "You know," Ned said, gazing up at the trees, "I always like this part of winter best. When everything's still. When even the birds quiet down. It's like God himself is pausing, just watching, listening." Homer followed his gaze. The sky was a soft grey, the kind that seemed to hum instead of shine. The trees stood frozen in place, each branch wearing a thin coat of white. The world felt paused, as if waiting for someone to breathe a little deeper. "I never think of it that way," Homer admitted. "Mostly, I hope my socks stay dry," Ned chuckled. "That too." They stood in silence for a while, two men with completely different worldviews, bound by the same cold morning and the same neighborhood fence. "You ever wonder," Ned asked quietly, "if the small stuff is actually the big stuff?" Homer blinked. "Like what?" "Like this," Ned said, gesturing to the snow, the sky, the quiet. "The ordinary things we don't take pictures of. The tiny kindnesses. The way a house feels warmer when someone made it that way." Homer shifted, unsure if he was being drawn into one of Ned's sermonettes or something deeper. "I don't know," Homer said. "I fall on the ice. I get up. I light the fire. The kids don't freeze. Seems pretty small to me." Ned smiled, gently. "Maybe. But your kids will remember it. Not the fire itself, but the fact that you made it. That you cared enough to go out there, slip on your butt, and bring it home." Homer looked down at his gloves. Snow clung to the fingertips. "Maybe," he muttered. Behind them, a wind chime on Flanders' porch rang out softly. "Well," Ned said, patting the fence, "I better get back to the walk. You need anything, you holler." "I'll holler," Homer said. "Maybe for Coco." "You got it, Neighborino." As Ned walked away, Homer picked the logs back up and took them inside. His back ached. His hands were red. But somehow, the warmth inside the house felt a little richer than before. He didn't tell Marge about the fall. He didn't tell the kids about the conversation. But that evening, when the fireplace glowed orange and shadows danced on the walls, Homer looked into the flames just a little longer than usual. And later, when Bart threw a sock at him from the hallway and Lisa asked him about carbon emissions, and Maggie dozed on his chest without a care in the world, Homer smiled. Because maybe the small stuff really was the big stuff. And maybe, just maybe, he was doing okay. The snow had started to glisten by mid-afternoon, as the faintest light broke through the clouds above Springfield. It wasn't the bright, golden sunshine of Selma, but rather a soft silver glow that gave everything a quiet kind of magic, like someone had placed a sheer veil over the world, making it more gentle, more bearable. Inside the Simpson house, Lisa had just finished writing in her journal and was putting on her boots by the back door. She had no specific plans. She only knew that the snow outside was calling her in a language older than words. Before she could even zip up her coat, Bart came skidding into the kitchen, his cheeks flushed from the cold, a wild grin spread across his face. "Come on, Liz. It's perfect out there. We gotta go build the biggest snowman in the neighborhood. Or maybe a snow monster that eats mailboxes." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "You've already been outside." "Yeah," Bart said, puffing out his chest like a proud Arctic explorer. "Scouted the terrain. Snow's good. Crunchy but sticky. Ideal for combat." Lisa sighed with a smile. "Of course." Within minutes, the two of them were outside, boots crunching on the icy path, scarves fluttering behind them, cheeks pink with life. The backyard stretched out in untouched white, only a few sets of prints breaking the surface, Homer's clumsy trails from earlier, and some faint, delicate paw prints left by a curious squirrel. Bart immediately dropped to his knees and began packing snow. "We start with the base, then we make the arms explode. Trust me, it's artistic." Lisa ignored the explosion part and began building her own snow figure a few feet away. Her snow woman had a thoughtful tilt to the head, and she was attempting to craft fingers out of twigs. Bart, meanwhile, had already stuck an empty soup can on top of his snow creature and was preparing a speech in its voice. For a while, they didn't talk, just moved in the snow, side by side. The kind of togetherness only siblings can understand. Even when they bickered, even when they argued over who got the last waffle or who left the toothpaste cap off, there was something steady between them. A rhythm. A quiet loyalty. When the snow people were finished, or at least finished enough to pass Bart's chaos inspection, they both stepped back to admire their work. "That one," Bart said, pointing to Lisa's snow woman, "looks like she's about to explain how capitalism is failing." Lisa smiled proudly. "She is. And mine." Bart gestured at his hunched, one-eyed creation with a crooked grin. Lisa nodded slowly. "Looks like he'd be banned from 5 counties." "Good job." Bart grinned. "Thanks." They plopped down onto the cold ground, backs against the fence, arms resting on their knees. The snow was damp, but it didn't matter. Sometimes, you just needed to feel the cold to appreciate how alive you were. As Bart began forming a snowball absent-mindedly, Lisa looked up at the sky. "It's quiet today," she said. "Yeah," Bart replied. "Kinda nice, huh, yeah." And just like that, the conversation stopped. Not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing needed to be said. Watching them, I couldn't help but drift into my own memory. I must have been 8 years old. The snow that winter had come unexpectedly early, catching the town off guard. My father had forgotten to buy salt for the steps, and my mother had run out of cocoa mix. Still, that day remains one of the happiest in my memory. My brother and I, he was older by 2 years, we spent the entire afternoon building an elaborate snow village. Not just 1 or 2 snowmen, but an entire miniature town. Snow houses, snow fences, even a crook snow dog. Our gloves were soaked. Our boots were full of snow. But we laughed and built, and imagined like the cold didn't exist. Later that evening, when we finally came in, my mother had somehow managed to heat up a little milk and honey. We sat by the heater, our socks steaming, and drank from mismatched mugs. It was simple. So simple. But in my heart, it felt like the richest moment in the world. I remember watching my brother quietly sip his drink, cheeks still red, and thinking, I hope we never grow apart. We did, of course. Life pulled us in different directions, different cities, different holidays. But every time it snows, every time the world turns white and quiet, I remember that afternoon, that village, that tiny crook snow dog. So when I see Bart and Lisa sitting there in their own silence, I see more than 2 children in the snow. I see the bond that outlives childhood. I see the memories they don't even know they're making. Back in the Simpson yard, Bart stood up and stretched. "Want to have a snowball fight?" Lisa narrowed her eyes. "You're going to play fair this time." Bart raised his hands solemnly. "Scout's honor?" "You were never a scout." "Exactly. No rules." He took off running, laughing, as Lisa grabbed a fistful of snow and gave chase. They darted around the yard, ducking behind trees and fences, tossing snow in wild, soft arcs. Bart slipped once, fell on his back, and laughed so loudly it echoed across the yard. Lisa stood over him, shaking her head, a grin she couldn't hide pulling at her lips. In that moment, there was no school pressure, no homework, no news reports, no chores, just snow, just siblings, just now. And sometimes, now is everything. Later, as the sun dipped just enough to turn the snow pink at the edges, they wandered back inside, leaving a yard full of footprints and to slightly lopsided snow people watching silently from the fence. Their gloves were wet, their noses were cold, but their hearts were warm. By the time the sky had begun its gentle descent into Simpson's home, the lighting slanted and movement had mellowed into a kind of comfortable hush. Wet mittens and scarves lay drying by the heater, and the only real sound came from the low bubbling of something simmering on the stove. In the kitchen, Marge Simpson stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up, hair pinned back more loosely than usual. Her movements were unhurried, each step intentional, almost meditative. She wasn't cooking to impress anyone. No one was visiting. There was no holiday to celebrate, no guest list to feed. She was simply making soup. But oh, what a soup it was. Carrots, celery, potatoes, and bits of leftover chicken, the kind of simple ingredients that, when put together with enough care, created something far greater than the sum of its parts. Marge wasn't reading a recipe. She didn't need one. Her hands knew what to do. Her taste buds trusted memory more than measurement. Steam rose from the pot and filled the kitchen with a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the warmth of intention, of nurturing, of showing love in the quietest way possible. For Marge, this soup wasn't just dinner. It was a gesture. Earlier that day, she'd watched Homer come in from the cold, cheeks red, boots wet, arms full of wood, and a few extra aches. She saw the snow in his hair, the way he shook off fatigue with a goofy smile. She noticed Bart and Lisa returning from the yard, faces flushed, voices loud, but hearts light. She saw the snow on their coats, the trail of their footsteps across the floor, the joy in their tired eyes. And so she cooked not out of obligation, but out of instinct. It was her way of wrapping a blanket around her family without saying a word. In that moment, watching the soup slowly come to life, Marge felt something shift inside her. Not dramatically, not like a thunderclap, but softly, like snow settling on a roof. She thought about her own mother's stern, busy, always efficient. But there had been moments, quiet ones, a cup of tea when she was sick, a favorite dish waiting on the table after a hard day. Marge had never realized it then, but those small things had spoken volumes. It made her wonder how many things do we miss while looking for something bigger. She stirred the pot, not to keep it from burning, but simply to stay close to it. Meanwhile, the rest of the house had begun to drift toward the kitchen like moths to flame. First Homer, drawn by the smell, peeked in. "What's that?" he asked, wide-eyed, as though the bubbling part were a treasure chest. "It's soup, Homer," Marge replied, amused. "Magic soup," he said hopefully. "Just the regular kind. But I did use real butter this time." Homer placed a hand over his heart. "I don't deserve you." Marge smiled. "No. But you're still getting a bowl." Soon Bart and Lisa wandered in, still bickering about whether the snowman needed arms made of actual sticks or Cheetos. "Mom," Bart said, pausing mid-rant. "Is that chicken soup?" Lisa inhaled. "Smells homemade." "It is," Marge said, already reaching for the bowls. The four of them gathered at the kitchen table, no fancy setup, no holiday centerpiece, just for mismatched placemats, and the chip bowls they'd always used. Maggie, bundled in a soft blanket, dozed peacefully in her baby chair nearby. And then there was quiet. Not the kind born of awkwardness or distance, but the kind that rises when people are content. When nothing needs to be said, because everything that matters is already understood. They ate slowly. The soup was hot and comforting, the kind that fills more than just your stomach. Lisa dipped her bread into the broth with quiet delight. Bart slurped obnoxiously, earning a playful eye roll from Lisa. Homer sighed after every bite, as if it were the most satisfying meal he'd ever had. Marge just watched them all, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She didn't need applause. She didn't need thank yous. This was enough. After dinner, the family drifted to the living room. The fireplace crackled gently. The lights had dimmed just enough to make the room glow. Outside, snow still fell lightly, quietly, like a lullaby for the earth. Homer dozed off in his chair, a thin blanket across his legs, and Maggie snuggled against his chest. Bart lay sprawled on the floor with a comic book, while Lisa sat nearby, absently sketching something in her notebook, a snow woman, perhaps, or maybe just shapes that meant nothing and everything all at once. And Marge sat in her spot on the couch, cup of tea in hand, eyes soft. It was a scene no one would frame. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't grand. But it was life. And it was beautiful. As I picture them there, I think about all the evenings we forget to hold on to. The ones we don't photograph. The ones that slip past us in their quiet comfort. The smell of soup. The sound of a turning page. A fire gently snapping. A child's weight on your chest. These are the small things that grow into big things when you look back. I remember once, as a teenager, coming home from school on a particularly rough day. My test scores had been lower than expected. My friends had ignored me at lunch. I felt unseen, unimportant. When I walked through the door, I didn't say anything. I dropped my bag, took off my coat, sat at the kitchen table without a word, and then my mother placed a bowl in front of me. Soup, hot, simple, no speech, no lecture. Just warmth. It was enough to make me cry. She never asked why. She didn't need to. And now, decades later, I don't remember the test. I don't remember what the fight was about. But I remember the soup. That's the kind of memory we all carry. The kind that sneaks up on you during snowfall. That returns when the house is quiet. that reminds you love is not always loud, it's often found in silence, in care, in presence. So if you're listening to this tonight, my dear friend, I hope you know that your small gestures matter. The quiet meals you make, the way you listen when someone speaks, the way you smile at someone tired to smile back. These things echo. They live in hearts longer than words do. As this day in Springfield fades into twilight, I leave you with this thought. Sometimes the most ordinary days are the ones that hold our entire lives inside them. You won't remember every gift, or every achievement, or every word, but you will remember how it felt to be safe, to be seen, to be home. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for sharing this winter evening, this simple moment, this quiet story. I'm Lucy Vane, and I hope that, wherever you are, you feel a little warmer now. Until next time, be gentle, be present, and stay close to what matters most. And if this little story has brought you a moment of peace, a smile, or a memory worth holding on to, I'd be so grateful if you could support this journey. I'm still new here, and every kind word, every bit of encouragement means the world. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a kind comment, or simply sharing it with someone who might need a quiet moment, too. Your support helps me keep telling these gentle stories that remind us of who we are and what really matters.